Hi, welcome back to another episode of Hooked. My name is Blessed.
And I'm Precious.
And we'll be your hosts once again today. Here at Hooked, we equip you to thrive in your love, sex, relationship, and dating. We have candid conversations about interesting topics. And in this particular episode, we are going to be talking about communication. In case you haven't watched our previous videos, please make sure you do it. Subscribe to our channel right now, and let's just dive into it right now. Last week we defined what communication is, and we said that basically the basic definition of communication is sending and receiving messages. And in our previous two episodes, we talked about receiving messages, how important it is for you to be a good listener, and we talked about the 3 A's of listening if you missed it. In this particular episode, we are going to talk about the aspect of sending messages.
When you're the one talking.
Yes, when you're the one communicating, because it affects how the communication and connection happens between the two of you in a relationship. And the first thing I would like us to quickly discuss is Jesus in the Bible. Jesus in Matthew 12:24 mentions a statement where he says that out of the abundance of your heart, your mouth speaks. Could you talk more about that?
It eventually shows over time if you've been having something in your heart, or you cannot communicate what you do not have usually. And the thing that comes to mind as you are talking was the fact that if you have good thoughts about someone, if you esteem them, if you love them deeply, that is what is going to come out in your communication. And if you don't maybe love someone, or you don't esteem them highly, eventually it also comes out in the way you communicate. So it's very important to also invest in our heart, in what is in our heart, and what we put in our hearts. That's what quickly comes to mind.
Absolutely. The other truth is that you know, our lives are governed, especially in a relationship, because I assume maybe you truly love someone in a relationship. If I know you probably truly love someone, but also it's possible that you can communicate from a place of fear. Where your heart is filled with so much fear. You're afraid of being found out. You're afraid of the real you being exposed, and so you end up being passive at times in your communication. And we're going to talk about those 3 types of communication. But you find that you are struggling to communicate something. But also I think the other thing that besides the struggle with the fear is that many of us do not know how to communicate our feelings without holding the other person ransom.
I think it's very true. Like in our relationship, when we're dating, even when we're married, I think at the first years I struggled a lot with communication, because sometimes you don't feel like you're being extra. You know, like maybe you've talked about something today, and tomorrow you talk about something else, then so eventually you start to harbor. Let me call it harbor. You start to guard what you say, to be very careful with what you say. And it doesn't help much, because eventually you would rather you learn how to effectively communicate your feelings than keep something until you are literally exploding.
Until it explodes over.
Yes.
In his book, one of the books I found really helpful about communication is a book by Danny Silk. A book by Danny Silk called Keep Your Love On. If you can find it, please get your hands on it. And he mentions a statement where he says that fear of truth is the greatest hijacker of communication. Fear of truth. I think you are talking about at times you're afraid to communicate the real truth that is in your heart, because either you don't know how it's going to be received by the other person, or it's just about you. You fear that when you communicate the truth, the other person will get to see the real you, and you're not sure how they will react toward you.
And sometimes it's really because I think this thing is informed also by very many things. Sometimes it's how we have grown up seeing our parents communicate. And so when you grow up, you don't know better. You kind of get the same habits from what you grew up seeing, and you transfer the same thing into your relationship or into your marriage. And sometimes it's very good to look back and say, okay, how am I communicating? How is my past communicating? How I communicate now? And for me, I found that even with my harboring, I realized it's what I had known. Like, you don't openly communicate to someone how you feel. And because of also very many things, you know, sometimes you fear how it will be received. Maybe because of the past, last time we were talking about it, the past experiences, the past communications that you've had. And so you're not very sure how it's going to be received. And sometimes you're just stuck, you know. So you just say, okay, let me keep quiet for some time until...
So as you're speaking, I remembered the three things that the three forms of communication that Danisil talks about. He talks about passive communicators, passive communication, and then he talks about aggressive communication, then he talks about assertive communication. And the thing that you are talking about passive communication,
I know where it lies. Yeah.
Where does it lie?
It's definitely passive. Because when you, I don't know if you guys have had something called Cold War.
Yeah.
You probably heard about it. We've experienced it sometimes. And
you're the major general.
No, that's changed. That's changed. So the Cold Wars come from that passive communication, where you're just not engaging. You're just not engaged.
You're basically convinced that the other person's opinion, I think, is much more important than yours. And so you know, like how a person will say, can we arrange this room like this? And you're like, whatever. And yet you have an opinion.
Yeah.
Can we go out? Which place would you like to eat out at? You're like, whatever you decide. It's like you are a passive communicator. You're trying to show that, in essence, what you're communicating to the other person is that your opinion matters more than mine. Or I don't have an opinion. So that...
Or I have an opinion, but I don't think it matters.
Exactly. Or I have an opinion, but I don't think it matters, so I'm not going to communicate it. And then you find yourself grumbling in the background. And complaining and what? Danny Silk says, I'm going to just read the quote. He says that passive people justify devaluing themselves by painting themselves as long-suffering, patient servants.
Victims.
Yeah, victims basically, who keep the peace and don't ever make problems. In reality, they are lying cowards. That's what he asserts in his book, and I think it is absolutely true.
Yeah.
So in a relationship, it's helpful for you not to be a passive communicator. And like we said, it could be based on your background and things you've experienced, But then there is this other...
Can change.
Yes, it can change.
Yeah.
Then there is this other type.
Oh.
Aggressive communicators. You know who the major general...
Yeah, in our scenario, he is the aggressive one.
I used to be.
You used to be. Oh, I'm sorry. He used to be the aggressive one. Yeah.
Aggressive communicators. Like she said, you matter.
I don't.
No, rather, I matter and you don't matter. Like basically, an aggressive communicator in a relationship pushes their agenda. Have you met those people? It doesn't matter what you say. What matters is their opinion.
I'm just thinking about a scenario, like you have colors that are basic, like red, blue, orange. But an aggressive person will make orange to be blue. And it will be right.
And he will convince you.
Yeah, until orange becomes blue.
Yeah. So in that scenario, what ends up happening is that you find that the person is domineering, like they are like some sort of like dictator in the relationship. And by the way, both are motivated from a place of fear.
Yeah.
Like the passive communicator is afraid of releasing their opinion and making the truth in their heart known, while the aggressive communicator is afraid that if they let down their guard they've lost and the other person has won.
It's actually always about winning and losing.
Exactly.
And not just having a proper conversation.
Yeah. It's about who has won. So the aggressive communicator is like, every conversation, I must be the winner.
Wow.
Yeah, I must be the winner. The the one who does passive communication is like, well, I can lose it. It's okay. I will lose. The other person must be the winner. And yet there is a better way. There is a better place to communicate, and that's the place where we all need to grow to, where it is, that's the third thing it talks about, that is assertive communication. And with assertive communication, it is that your opinion matters, so does mine.
Yes.
You know, like, you matter, so do I. We may be different. We may have different opinions about something. And like we said, that the goal of communication is not agreement, really, but understanding.
Yeah.
But understanding from a place where you value each other, you value each other's opinion, you understand that that person's opinion matters as well as mine.
Yeah.
And so you work together to try and find a solution that will work for the both of you.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that they will always take your opinion. At times they might take the other opinion, but that doesn't mean you have lost. At least you shared the opinion and you both agreed that the opinion can work out for the two of you. Is there something you'd like to add to that?
I think you've really explained it well. I know that it's a journey to get to a point where you can assertively communicate. Like we shared in our relationship, and when you're coming together in a relationship, really you're different. Like you can't take that away. And so you're going to find very many reasons why you don't agree about things and how you do them differently. But with time, it grows to a place where you now understand what's best for you, and then you can do that. I must say that our communication has totally improved, because we understood what weaknesses we both had as regards to communication and where we could do better as individuals, and we worked towards that. So you can work toward that. You can grow into a place where you comfortably communicate, and it even doesn't apply only in relationships. You need to be a person who can communicate effectively in your workplace, amongst your peers, with your leaders, with the people that you serve with. You should be a person who can comfortably say your opinion without having to dominate and without having to feel inferior. So that then, I think it also comes from a place of identity, which I think we'll address in one of our episodes, really, because it's a security issue. It's an identity thing. Sometimes you have that thing that keeps telling you that your opinion doesn't matter. Or your opinion is less important than the rest of the people in the room, and so you find that you're in that place where you're not sure whether you should speak or whether you should keep quiet.
Exactly. So
it's a journey where you get to grow and know that I am weak in this area, and so you push yourself to be better. When you have feelings that you're harboring, you say, okay, I can't harbor this because it's not helpful for us. So you find that you have to intentionally work on that weak part until you and it doesn't happen overnight. It's a journey.
And so, as we conclude the episode today, we would like to ask you, which of the three communication types do you find yourself using in a relationship? Is it passive communication? Is it aggressive communication? Or is it the assertive communication? And whichever it is, if it is the first two, you can work your way to being an assertive communicator. Remember, it is out of the abundance of the heart that you communicate. The first two are motivated by fear. The last one, assertive communication, is motivated by love, where you truly love the person, and the goal of the communication with them is for you to connect. Parting shots as we close the episode.
Parting shots. You can give us, I think. I just had something in mind that I wanted to say, but it has kind of skipped, so I'm going to say as it comes.
No worries. All right. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. Once again, remember to subscribe, like the video, share it with your friends, and interact with us in the comments. What do you think? What are some of the challenges you've found as you've communicated between the two of you in your relationship? Thank you so much for tuning in. See you in our next episode.